Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Diane and my passion is painting and creating in my studio. Every day I share a video with you on YouTube in which I paint and create all sorts of nature-inspired pictures. I also share loads of tips on how to make the most of your painting journey, interrupted fairly frequently by our family of dogs, cats, chickens and sheep. So welcome on board, click subscribe and turn on notifications, and let's learn to paint watercolor. Hi everyone and welcome to my studio. Today I'm going back to summer and we're going to be using another technique of drawing and painting, and I'm going to start off with a charcoal sketch. Now I've got this little pot here, I've got loads of charcoal and I don't use it all that often because some people say it's messy and so on, don't they? But there's a method in my madness really. I'm thinking of doing some hibiscus flowers, and in order to do hibiscus, first of all we need to draw a sketch. And I was reading a book the other day by a lady who I don't think is with us anymore, the wife of the great artist Rowland Hilder, who was an English, although he was born in New York, he was an English resident most of his life, and his wife was also a painter and an artist, and she concentrated on drawing, and she wrote a few books about how to draw, which have influenced me over the years. And in one of her books she mentions that it's a good idea to do your initial sketch when you're learning to draw especially, but even once you can draw, to do your initial sketch in charcoal. And what she used to do, she used to sketch her flower like this, and you can get a wonderful gradation of tone, shadow, light and shade and so on, bringing out the three-dimensionality of the flower. You can get a very good result using charcoal because you just press a little harder and lo and behold you have shape. And what she did, like I say, I'm just trying to think where to put the stamen. Yeah, we'll put that there, and that has, because that's the characteristic thing about hibiscus, isn't it? They have that. And then what she did, she suggested, was once you've got your rough outline then of the one flower, let's say we're starting off with that, then you come in with a brush and you dust off most of the charcoal so that it's not dark and dirty anymore. And then you can, after that, you can work on your sketch with a pencil or a pen. And I thought to myself, well, that's a really good idea. Or in fact, if you're not quite happy with the way it's turned out, you can come back in and work on it a little bit more. We have, how many petals? I've got one here, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've been trying that out, and I think that's actually a very handy thing. So what I'm doing right now is I'm designing, basically, trying to design a layout for a painting with some hibiscus. So using this charcoal idea, you can alter things much more easily. And I'm going to be using this quite a lot going forward. So we're going to put another flower down here. Could start with the center, I suppose, and come out with a petal like that. If you try this, I do heartily recommend that you try different ways of drawing. It's not all about just using a pencil. It's not even about using a Staedtler pigment liner, because when you draw with a different medium like charcoal, you will find that you get a different sort of level of sensitivity, and you discover things about the way you want to hold things and the way you want to make things work. And sometimes you'll find, Tamsin said to me yesterday, I did a course on drawing a few years ago, and one of the things that was most exciting was realizing how thrilling it is to paint, to draw with charcoal. And I thought to myself, well, that's really interesting because it takes a lot to excite my normally placid daughter. If she was excited by charcoal, I thought to myself, we all could be, couldn't we? So there we have 2. And we might want to bring in a stem down here and have some leaves coming out from there. I used to live in I lived in Bermuda for a little while. My husband was always working abroad, and so we lived in Bermuda for a while, which was nice, made a nice change from Canada. And then after that he was transferred to the Bahamas, so we had more than enough tropical flowers. And you know what, you can get bored with painting hibiscus, but now you sort of kind of miss it now. Anyway, so I know roughly what they look like, and yeah, so there's 2, and we could put in a bud over here. I have to share with you the fact that we passed 10,000 subscribers yesterday, just this morning. I think it was 7 o'clock this morning we went over 10,000, which is amazing because it's less than a year. We've gone from 0 to hero. So thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time to subscribe and to follow us on our journey, post-pandemic journey. One good thing that's come out of all of that. And there's not that many, but that's one. So there we are. That's a sketch of a hibiscus that we're going to draw today, to paint, I think. And I'll put the sketch up for you to trace if you want. Put it up, not this one, but a pen and ink one of the final painting. And then you can download that from the internet, from our website, dianeantone.com, for free. And you can also donate there if you want to. We like to give away things free as much as we possibly can, but we do need to keep going. And so the odd little donation, some of you have been so amazingly generous. Can't believe it, it's wonderful, thank you so much. Right, so I'll now make a cup of coffee and come back to you in a second with the next step. Okay, so I've transferred my sketch onto my piece of paper that I'm using today for this painting. And the paper I am using today is going to be Clairefontaine Etival watercolor paper. It's a size A4, approximately 20 by 30 centimeters, and it's cold pressed paper with a robust kind of surface. It's a nice tooth, not too much, not too little, not too smooth and not too rough. It's 100% cellulose paper, and it reacts really well to washes and so on and so forth. And for beginners, it's ideal because it will take a fair amount of abuse. And as long as you don't use too much water, it won't buckle. And I've just taped it down. I haven't stretched it today. I'm just going to, because I'm going to do a painting that isn't going to be completely wet in wet, and so that's okay. So I'll put a link to Amazon for that particular paper in the description below. And if you want to try that out, I would highly recommend it. It is a good learner's paper. I often think that people graduate to papers like Arches too soon, because that paper can be quite tricky, and I don't think you need to spend that amount of money on paper. I completely disagree that you must buy the best paper that's available. It's like trying to learn to drive a car beginning with a Lamborghini. You just don't do it. You learn in a little controllable vehicle that you know that you can control. So I'm going to put a little bit of masking fluid onto this painting here for the stamens, which are very inclined to be quite light. So just to preserve that light in case we need to paint over it, I'll put that in there like that. And so that's all we need there. We don't need any more masking fluid. This is quite good, this Molotov pump marker. It's like a pen. It's a bit like a felt tip pen. It has a felt nib at the end there, and the marking fluid comes out of there. Every time you use it, you have to pick off little bits of dried masking fluid, but it's okay, it works. Usually I used to use a brush, but I've tried this. I bought it to try it out, and it's okay. I'll use that until it's all gone. I don't know if I'll buy it again. Okay, so I'm going to use, for this painting, I'm going to use some of these brushes. These are Zen Art brushes. They're the Black Tulip. Came in a set of 6, and you've got everything you need here. I'll put a link to those in the description below as well. They're quite good actually. They're what they call faux squirrel. So it's a synthetic artificial squirrel fibre. They're quite soft, but they're a nice shape. They've got lovely point. This is a rigger, which is quite a nice length. It's not too long, and it's easy to control. And we also have a cat's tongue, which is a flat oval. That's good for washes and various leaf effects. We've got a size 8 flat, which is a chisel-shaped brush, which is good for many, many things. And a larger flat wash brush, which is a 3/4 inch. And then we've got a size 10 round and a size 8 round. And there's some blue tack on the end of that. We don't need that. So let's get started. And to start with, we're going to be using these colours. That's we've got pink here. This is a permanent rose, or it could be alizarin crimson, or it could be opera, it could be any one of those colours, or whatever you choose, but I've decided to go with a basic rose. This is olive green, this is quinacridone gold, and this is cobalt blue. So those 4 colours are going to be what I'm planning to use for this particular painting. And we will start, I think, because I'm going to do the flowers in pink. I'll start with the leaves first of all, I think. And that means that we'll begin by wetting some of the leaves just with a little drop of water. And once they're wet, we won't wet them all at once, but I'll wet some of them. And then I'll come in with a mixture of I need my palette. Hang on a second. What did I do with it? This one will do. A mixture of olive green and a bit of quinacridone gold to give us a nice green. And we'll just drop some colour in there. And let it blend into the water. Change the colour a little bit as you go along. Don't be too finicky about that. Add a little bit more gold if you feel you'd like to do that, or a little bit more blue, or both. And just let that do its own thing. Best not to play with it too much. I think I've got a little bit of, what do you call it? Eraser there. So that's fine, and then it's been a bit of a chaotic day today. What's new, you say? We've got somebody in the garden who's laying concrete slabs and pads and mending holes, and so if you can hear in the background something that sounds a bit like a concrete mixer, that's because it is. And my husband's working on installing the air conditioning, which is going to be marvellous. That's going to produce the heating as well for the winter. So yes, it's a good idea to wet the leaves first. The reason being that if you don't, you get many more brush marks. And so if you want something to be fairly smooth, it's best to wet them first. And this will be the first layer, and we'll let that dry, and then we'll come in and just adjust what we've got. Okay, so if you do it with it dry, you get a different effect, and that's good too. Sometimes what I like to do is, as I work across the painting, sometimes I'll start off with wet in wet, and then I'll go to wet on dry, just for variety really, because it keeps the eye interested. This brush is very good for leaves, so can heartily recommend that, the Zen Art. And we've got a stem here, so we'll just pull that down, and we've got another one here, so we'll just indicate that. And then I'm just going to drop a little bit of pink there for the bud and let that bleed a little bit. And if you want to, you can draw in your veins by taking this glass brush, pen that I started using the other day, is ideal for that. Up until now I've tended to use the corner of a credit card, but this I think is much more controllable, and so they're only about £5 or £6. I don't know why they're so cheap, but if you just scrape into the slightly wet paint. Arthur, would you please be quiet? You can get the veins, because what happens is you make an indentation and then the paint kind of collects in those grooves and you get like that. So that's a very good example. You get the veins showing up. If you've left it a little bit long or longer, like I have there, you get lighter ones, which is great too, because some dark and some light all gives variety. And then you can come back in afterwards and just alter it if it's not quite what you wanted. But that's a good way to start. I'm going to have to do something about that kitten, aren't I? Before it dries completely, a little bit more colour here. And I'm going to, this is kind of negative painting a little bit here, where I'm coming up close to the flower and just dropping in the darks there. That's going to help the flower to stand out. Anyone who thinks I'm abusing that cat, he's been out in the garden all morning having fun in the vegetable garden, and it's time for his snack and sleep now. He's only about, I don't know, 10 weeks old. It's time he had a little bit of a rest. So if he doesn't shut up in 2 minutes, whoops, I will we'll abandon the video for a minute and go and see what's wrong with him. Okay, so we've got our leaves in the first stage. So now I've moved up to the number 10 round to start on the painting of the petals, just because I want to try and give this set of brushes a little bit more of a workout. Normally I would probably stick with the smaller brush, but just to see, because it might well be that I get a better result using the larger brush. So I'm just dropping in the first layer of colour for these pink flowers and keeping it very light, and so a little bit towards the edges and broken colour coming in. Just trying to keep it a little bit random and light. And then what we'll do is we'll let that dry and then come back in with a second layer. But we mustn't forget to soften some of the edges using the lost and found technique, because when you put paint onto a dry surface, of course, you get lots of quite sharp lines, but that's okay. You can soften them up. And then I'm going to use a little bit of the rose colour with some quinacridone gold just to drop into the centre here. And we'll soften that a little bit and let that bleed out. When this is dry, we'll rub off the masking fluid and paint in the stamen. We won't do that yet though. Okay, so going back to my light pink, and so now we'll do the second one. And just bringing the colour in again, as I said before. So we'll put the pink behind the stamen, because since I've marked it out, I don't need to paint around it. Although if I hadn't been able to mask it out, then I would have painted around it. The most important thing when you're doing a painting like this is to retain the lights, which means don't put too much paint on the paper. You can always add it, but it's a lot harder to take it away. It's best if you don't start thinking about what you're going to have for lunch or dinner while you're doing it, but concentrate, unlike me, but concentrate on painting and not painting. Remember, less is more. A bit like, you know, it's better to weigh less than to weigh more. So less is always more. Well, no, not always, but often. Okay, so that's that. And then we'll come back again on also in the centre here with this. And I'll darken that up later, the centre. I'll probably come back in with a little bit of blue or something, or red, to make that a little bit darker. So now that's the first step, and I need to, although it looks as if it's dry, it's not. This paint is still quite damp, so I'm going to let that dry and let the cat go to sleep and pull that out a little bit. And I'll be back after lunch when that's dry to finish it off and perhaps try another brush for the background. So far we've used the size 10 and the size 8 round. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, so it's completely dry now, and I'm just now going to erase the pencil marks from my original sketch, and just making sure I get as many of those off as possible. So sometimes need to go over it more than once. And you can also take the line of this off as well with the eraser. It's just an ordinary rubber, and that will lift that off quite reasonably easily. So if you had have put a dark wash over the top of that, you'd be grateful for that line now showing. It wasn't excuse me, it wasn't entirely necessary for this particular painting, as it turns out, because I didn't in the end do much of a wash over there, but anyway, no harm in that. So now the next step is to paint in the stamen. So I'm going to do that now with a little bit of pink, following the line that I drew before down to there, and then where that goes white, we'll paint the shadow around the line rather than the actual line itself. And the same for the other one. So we draw shadow like that. And then we probably just want to make the center of the flower a little bit darker. And then for the anthers up here, we're just going to pop in some little quinacridone gold dots, basically, like that. And then we might want to strengthen this up a little bit. And then now the second layer of the actual flower. So we're going to add to the colour that we've already put in. So painting over in the same places, and so leaving the whites, and where you go over it again, you get obviously it's darker with a little bit more texture. Same here. And don't forget the paint will dry a little bit lighter. So you need to keep this curve going, which is what shows the shape of the leaf, of the petal. I think we might want to make that a little bit darker again. In the centre, just a little bit. In here, since we're at it, a couple of little dots up here too. The point of this brush is really sharp, and it's because it's brand new, of course. So you can get some very good detail using that if you want. And you can, just using one or two hairs on the end of that brush actually, if you want, you can just outline the edge of the flower, leaf, petal. Might not want to do that, but you certainly can if you've got a pointy brush like that. And then I'm going to come in with some rather greenish blue or bluish green for some of these leaves, just to knock them back a little bit, especially near to the flower where it's more shadowy. we might want a little bit more shadow here too, where that petal falls behind the other one. You don't want to play around with it too much because you really do want to keep it nice and light. But I always feel when I get to this point that I want to put a dark in the centre, because I know that it will lighten up as it dries. And then as far as the background goes, it's very common to think to put spatter or stuff like that, and I often do. But this particular one, and I saw this done somewhere else, and I'm going to try out the cat's tongue for this. I hope this is going to work. This is a wash brush, so I'm going to use it to put a wash into the background, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that this flower is being seen up against a hillside, and that the hills in the distance are pale blue. Just need to get a test sheet. I didn't have a test sheet out, I don't know why. Yeah, that's about right. So pale blue in the background. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of a wash, as if there was a hill in the background there, which is one of the reasons why I taped down. It's going to be a very loose wash, but I can use the tip of the cat's tongue brush to get between the leaves, just very carefully painting around them. Doesn't matter if you overlap a little bit. And take this hill up a little bit like that, and behind the flower. And it's just to kind of make it sit more integrated onto the paper. And this cat's tongue brush is ideal for this because it has got that point, and that means it can get in between the bits that I've already painted, which is great. I would have ordinarily, until I had this brush, I would have used a flat, so something like this, but you can see how much easier this is to manipulate into the spaces between. So that's really good. That's working really quite well. And somehow you'll see that the flower is much more at home sitting there on the background like that. So don't need to do any more than that. We'll just leave that the way it is. Let it dry and see whether there's any corrections that need to be made once it's dry. Okay, so that's dry. And now coming back, really all we need to do at this point is just to drop in one or two very small darks, just to give a little bit more form to the painting where the flowers overlap. So we can bring that leaf down there a little bit. And I always hesitate to make anything darker where the two flowers join, because that's not necessarily successful, but we can darken what's behind or around to give more shape. So we'll do some of that here. And soften off the edge coming away. Lost and found edges. And maybe maybe a little bit over here. And you can see that that makes the whole thing just, I won't say pop, I hate that expression, but just makes it stand out a little bit. Just emphasize the shapes of the leaves a little bit. Not everywhere though, because that would look too much. And I think we need to know when we want to stop. And I think I'm going to stop about now. And hopefully that will give you some inspiration and you'll be able to give it a try yourself. So remember that this is where we started yesterday. I was playing around doing a quick sketch, which I was quite pleased with, and one or two people said, oh, why don't we have a tutorial on that. And then today I did the drawing in charcoal, which I heartily recommend, and I'll put a link in the description below for a packet of charcoal in case you wonder what sort to buy. And I would give that a go if I were you. If you're learning to sketch, if you're practicing drawing, dump the pencil for a bit and have a go with a stick of charcoal, and I think you'll find it's very liberating, and we all need liberating these days, don't we? So let's take the tape off, and I will say goodbye for now, and I'll see you again soon. The sooner the better, I hope. And yeah, the paper stayed nice and flat. No problems with that whatsoever, absolutely flat as a pancake. And it behaved, I think, extremely well in the circumstances. And very happy with my cat's tongue brush, which I knew I would find a good use for. And now I know what it is. It's ideal for painting backgrounds around something you've already painted. So I'll say bye-bye for now, everybody, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.